guess you could say I just want to have a meaningful relationship with someone special.
In 1991, Bret Easton Ellis' American Psycho was published to a storm of controversy. The darkly comic novel followed Patrick Bateman, a Wall Street hotshot by day, brutal killer by night. There were protests by organizations such as the National Organization for Women. The book was called misogynistic and cynical. It was a bestseller. The satiric tale of the 1980s is now a feature film. Joining me now to talk about that, Christian Bale. His portrayal of Patrick Bateman is the latest in a career that has included such films as Empire of the Sun and Velvet Goldmine. The film director, Mary Herron, whose latest project was a critically praised I Shot Andy Warhol, and the author behind it all, Bret Easton Ellis. I am pleased to have all of them here to talk about this movie. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Let me just, so let's just get sort of, you like the movie.
Yeah, I actually
because you reviewed
like
it for Gear Magazine.
Let's get to the point.
Yeah, let's find out.
Damn it.
Yeah, damn it. Let's get
That's what everyone wants to know. Yes, I like the movie. I know. I mean, I wish I...
Because it captured...
I think it clarified the themes of the novel. It clarified that the novel was actually a critique of male behavior. I think a lot of people don't realize that, who haven't read the book. And so it clarified that and also brought the humor of the book up to the surface. A lot of people also, I think, who are afraid of the novel, who haven't read the novel, don't understand that it's basically a comedy. It's basically a black comedy.
Yeah, they had a hard time getting that.
I think they, yeah,
well,
I think...
probably is because of the violence.
You know, in some ways, I think that's probably true. I think the violence is graphic enough that it has distracted people from...
It overshadowed everything.
I think it did, but I think that was a misreading. I think the initial misreading of the book came from people who assumed that the book was all about violence, when actually, if you add up the violent sequences in this book, you're going to get about 4 pages, and you're going to have basically 396 pages of, you know, lists and social satire and stuff going on in Patrick Bateman's head. So to me, it was never really a book about violence, though there was violence punctuated it.
What did you see it as, Mary, when you got to direct this?
Well, actually, I read it when it first came out in London in '91, and I was amazed just in because the real hardcore violence doesn't hit for about 100 pages, does it?
Yeah, about 150 pages.
130, yeah. I think I remember the exact page.
150.
And I remember, you know, when I started reading, I thought, oh, this is like, you know, early Evelyn Waugh. It's clearly, you know, very black comedy of manners, making fun of a crazy society. And I had sort of mixed feelings, real love-hate feelings for the late 80s. And I thought Bret had caught something about it that no one else had.
Is that why you wanted to do it?
Yeah, I think so. That was my initial thought. When they, the producers came to me in '96, and at first I thought, how do you make a film out of that? Because it really has does not an obvious cinematic adaptation, because there isn't a very clear narrative. And deliberately, you know. But, and then I thought, well, it's just time, just about enough time has passed to make a film about the 80s.
Beyond the controversy.
Yeah,
and
well,
beyond
actually,
the 80s, too.
Actually, beyond the 80s is what I thought, because
right.
you can just start to see it as a historical period, almost. Yeah. And I said to Ed Pressman, the producer, well, it would be a really good film for the millennium, you know.
I wonder if, just to make a quick reference, Bonfire of the Vanities as a film, regardless of whatever fault it had, was made too quick.
I think there were a lot...
There's no distance between it and the time it wanted to portray.
That's probably true. I mean, there were many problems with that film, but it might have been a better film if they'd waited 5-10 years. Yeah, because I think the themes, well, almost like everything. I mean, I think the meaning of everything becomes clearer after a 10-year period.
Yeah,
novels, films, everything.
Yeah. But you have watched this whole evolution. For a while there, all the talk was Leonardo DiCaprio and Oliver Stone, right?
Yes, that was.
I mean, you went through that period, and people were saying,
it was a brief period, but because it was Leonardo DiCaprio and Oliver Stone, it seems like it was a much longer period and a much, bigger thing. But I actually think that period lasted. I mean, I know it was horrible for Mary and for Christian because this, the timing was terrible and it interrupted a project that they had been involved in for years. And I think I'm often quoted out of context, and I will say this now, whenever I say that Leonardo DiCaprio was a great actor, and sure, it was an interesting idea, but they always cut me off and say, well, I think Christian Bale is the ideal Patrick Bateman and Mary Herron is the ideal director. I did not necessarily think it was a great idea, but that talk did go on for a little while, though in reality, I mean, I think they met, there was a bad reading of it. They didn't get along. They didn't see eye to eye on it, and then it was over. And then,
but, I mean, it was fairly extended actually. That I mean, it happened. It was about 6, wasn't it? I mean, I was over in Italy doing Midsummer Night's Dream.
April to the end of our
and then we didn't get back to.
I think this.
Mary's very specific about page numbers and dates.
Yeah. They must know more than I do about this.
The detailing, just like Bateman.
Someone saw a shot one Andy Warhol, and that was what the producers were attracted.
I think because I'd made a period film,
right,
about which was very detail based, actually, in the sense of that very you have to have a fairly meticulous reconstruction of pure atmosphere, and it was but a character that no one thought you would make a film about, which is Valerie Solanas, because she was, I love Valerie, but a lot of people found her totally unsympathetic, and I think they thought, well, here's a woman made a film that you wouldn't expect, And then it was a very good idea to get a woman to do it, because I think it helped to neutralize some of the controversy, and I think also
you're talking about this
one, yeah, right. Because I think there were things that I thought were crystal clear in the book, that it was a critique of male behavior,
right.
That maybe a woman was, I think almost definitely a woman was better at bringing
because
it
no
out.
one was more outraged about this than feminists, I guess.
That's right.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Well,
So
you'd think serial killers would be, but no. I mean, it was more or less feminists were the most outraged.
Let me just get Christian in here. So they dropped this script on your table. Do you get calls from people saying, "Forget it. Do not do this. It is not good for you.
Yeah,
Forget it."
I had an awful lot of calls saying it was going to be career suicide. I think because a lot of people would talk about Anthony Perkins in Psycho and say, once you play a villain like that, you never get to play anything else because you're stuck in everybody's imagination as that person. But Bateman is not I could never really view him just as a villain, pure and simple, because he's so ridiculous, He's not your ordinary kind of Hannibal Lecter kind of scary villain, because you laugh at him, never with him at all. So I was never really concerned and didn't take any of those career suicide threats seriously.
In fact, it sort of you on. Yeah.
Exactly. It sort of was exciting in many ways.
What do you like about Patrick Bateman?
What do I like?
Yeah.
I like nothing about him. I mean, he's a completely unredeeming character, and I didn't attempt to make him sympathetic at all. But what makes him entertaining is the fact that
he has no redeeming value.
But that at the same time, he finds himself in so many ridiculous situations and reacts in such a ridiculous manner. He's certainly somebody that I wouldn't want to, be at a table with and eating, but I'd certainly want to eavesdrop on his conversation.
All right, roll tape. Just want to give one sense of what this film looks like and Christian in the role of Patrick Bateman. Here it is, scene 1.
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my God. It even has a watermark.
Tell me about that scene, Mary.
Well, I have to say, it's one of my very favorite scenes in the book.
Yeah.
And I have to say, we really lifted it straight out of the book, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hardly been changed.
It's placed in the office instead of the restaurant. But it's,
that's right, yeah.
But you know what? It just goes to show you, though, that you read that scene in a book, and you might imagine certain people playing it, but when it's actually played out and it's visualized for you, it has a different sting to it. There's something funnier. The ominous music, the editing shifts. I don't know. It's really. I really did not think initially when I wrote that scene that it was, one of the funnier scenes. But when I see it in the movie, I still even now just totally crack up at it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it was one of the things that made me really love the book. The idea, but also the idea that these guys are so obsessed with the minutiae of status that they're basically having breakdowns over such tiny things.
What was the difficult challenge for you? I mean, in terms of making this film, was it the violence? Was it something else? Was it, how
the violence?
Bateman came out, making sure that you caught the spirit of Bateman?
Well, I think there's a tonal thing, which one of the things I liked in the book, I thought was very interesting in the book, was that it shifted totally abruptly from a social satire, comic scene, to something horrifying and upsetting. And I wanted that abruptness, that you would just in a way you wouldn't know where you were. So one moment, like in the business card scene, then the next scene is a disturbing scene. So it was making that decision to go with those abrupt shifts in tone. And then I guess the sort of technical problem was the fact that there isn't an obvious plot. I mean, it's not a serial killer story in the sense that they have the pursuit, the hunter, and the hunted, and the capture. So I had to kind of give it more the facade of a plot. You know, it feels like it has a more traditional plot, but in the end,
you had to actually select the pivotal moments in the film and then find a way to link them together
and restructure it. So I think basically it's very faithful to the book. All the elements are from the book, but the order is different. Sometimes I combine elements, shifted scenes.
Who did the screenplay?
Well, Guinevere Turner and I did the screenplay together.
Yeah.
Bateman does actually have an arc in the movie.
Yes.
What's the arc?
He goes from psychopath to psychotic.
Yes. I think that's right. He totally loses. By the end,
one psycho to the next, because he does have an ability to play the game and look very good in social circles and everything. And then by the end, he's absolutely lost any grasp on reality, and it becomes completely surreal.
Yeah. More hallucinatory, yeah. Although one thing I think is a failure on my part is that people keep coming out of this film thinking that it's all a dream, and I never intended it. All I wanted was it to be ambiguous in the way that the book was.
Why did they think that?
I think it's a failing of mine in the final scene that I just got the emphasis wrong, because I should have left it just more open-ended without wanting to give the plot away. It makes it seem like it's, I guess clearly, because people keep saying this to me, it makes it look like it was all in his head, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's not.
Take a look at this scene. This is where Willem Dafoe is playing Officer Donald Kimball, and he is interrogating Patrick Bateman.
Where did Paul hang out?
Hang out?
Yeah, you know, hang out.
Let me think. The Newport, Harry's, Fluties, Indochine, Nell's, the Cornell Club, the New York Yacht Club.
He had a yacht?
No, he just hung out there.
And where did he go to school?
Nice scene, huh?
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Now, how is this for you? I mean, are you getting more out of it? I mean, there's some people who say that a film, I think English Patient is one example often cited, and Dotcha's coming in here next week with another book, but he thought that English Patient, in a sense, captured the essence and the spirit and the heart of his book, and
in a completely different way, though.
Yeah.
I guess what you can only hope for as a writer when someone takes your book and turns it into a movie is that they're faithful to the sensibility and the tone, because it's two completely different mediums, and it's two completely different experiences. You're reading a book is completely different from watching a movie. One's an active thing, one's a passive thing, and all you can really hope for is that the filmmaker stays true to the sensibility and the tone of the work. Because the visualization of it and their readapting of it, it's going to be different. It's just going to be different. So, and believe me, I wish I could play the bratty artiste and go, Hollywood ruined yet another one of my books, but this movie's too good to do. No, it doesn't work.
I think we've seen that role before.
It happened a long time ago, but it can't happen now.
Mary, this is a film you set out to make?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I actually feel I didn't have final cut, but I feel that this is my final cut. Yeah. There's things I lost. There's scenes that aren't there. There's things I would go back and reshoot.
How did that happen? I mean, the studio looked at it and said...
Yeah, Lionsgate and I had our battles over casting, but they were fantastic about content. And really, I think if I'd tried to do this for a Hollywood studio, well, it would never have made it to the screen. But they would have had so many, doubts. But how can you make a film with somebody this unsympathetic? Yeah. Can't you boost the character of the detective? Can't you talk more about his unhappy childhood? Can't you give a psychological motivation? And Lionsgate were completely hands off. They said, we like the screenplay, and you just go and shoot it.
Yeah. You would visit the set.
I visited the set accidentally. Once was in Toronto when I was doing a book tour, and I just happened to go because I was nearby giving a reading or something. And then the second time I visited the set accidentally, I was just with some friends in the West Village going bar hopping. It was that kind of night, I guess. And I saw some film crews in the distance, and I saw some arc lights. Bar hopping, yeah. There were these vans, and then I saw a limo pull up, and Christian was in, and it was lit.
I didn't know the worst news we've heard.
Do you remember when I came over?
Yeah, you came up to me. It was our last night.
I walked into the movie set. It was very dislocated.
Was that down in the meat packing?
It was down in the meat packing district, yeah. So that's the only 2 times. But I didn't really want to be on the set. The one time that I was in Toronto, I was sort of looking over Mary's shoulder, and I said, maybe I would have done it differently. I don't know. And I thought, this is ridiculous. This is her film. They're making it. Let them do what they want. And then I walked off, and I really didn't think you needed my presence on the set. It would have been too distracting.
When most people who have not met you, who let's say are reading for something, you know, are they obsessed by this book? I mean, is it still right there at the top of the list of questions that people want to talk to you about?
You know, I suppose it is, and I suppose it's something I just have to get used to. I mean, I always thought that Less Than Zero was going to be the thing that kind of would haunt my career and would be the thing that I was always going to be known for.
Was that first or second?
That was the first book.
Right.
And, you know, this obviously has supplanted that and replaced it. And I am asked about it a lot, and it seems to be a book that a lot of people are responded to. But there's really not a lot you can do about that. You can't control how a mass audience responds to something you've written. But to me, it's just my third book. To me, it's just the process of writing it was the same as the other 4. And I look at it as my third novel, and not anything more special or more lovable about it on my part retorted than any of the other ones.
What book have any of you read that you think, in a sense, chronicles the present time we're living in? You know, what is the Bonfire, the book, or American Psycho for today?
Well, you know, I thought
Who's
it was.
writing?
I mean, you know, I thought Don DeLillo did it with Underworld a couple of years back. That to me seemed to be
all the way back to the 50s.
It started in the 50s, but it really came together in the present day stories because it kept flashing forward and flashing back, and it was very, very complicated in how it was structured. And that spoke to me a lot about where we are today. But I often, you know, I've got to be quite honest, I often don't read books for that reason, for, you know, novels especially, for a journalistic take on society.
Yeah,
or
but
for
if you see one, you
take.
recognize it. I mean, when somebody sort of captured the, you know, the tone or the spirit of a time.
I don't know.
That's a hard question.
It's a hard question. I haven't heard of one, if there is one.
Yeah.
But then often things get written 10, 20 years after, you know.
American Psycho opens this weekend. We'll be right back. Stay with us.